Imagine diving into the cold embrace of the deep ocean where sunlight fades into an eternal twilight. Vast structures rise from the seafloor like ancient cathedrals forged from living tissue, their fronds swaying hypnotically in currents we can barely comprehend. These are the underwater forests of the future, towering kelp-like behemoths and coral monoliths that pulse with hidden life. But who nurtures these giants, ensuring their spores drift to fertile ground far across the abyss? What unseen hands fertilize this submerged realm, turning barren rock into thriving ecosystems? Scientists whisper of ocean pollinators, creatures evolved beyond our wildest dreams to mimic bees in a world of water. Yet something lurks in the shadows of these groves, a mystery that chills even the hardiest diver. As we descend deeper, the water grows thick with questions, each one pulling us toward the unknown. These forests breathe, exhaling oxygen into waters starved of light, their massive blades absorbing carbon at rates 20 times greater than land trees. Brown macroalgae dominate, forming three-dimensional labyrinths that shelter fish, urchins, and crustaceans in layered refuges from canopy to root. Picture golden kelp stretching 30 meters tall, their holdfasts gripping sediment like desperate fingers. They emerged millions of years ago, over 32 million by some counts, adapting to rhythms of tide and storm. But in this speculative future, evolution has sculpted them into spore-releasing titans, gametes glittering like stardust in the gloom. Do they call to their pollinators with chemical lures, invisible perfumes dissolving into the flow? Or do bioluminescent flares summon allies from the dark, a siren's song in the deep? The balance teeters on the edge of symbiosis, where one misstep could unravel the entire web. Now picture the first responders, the drifters ethereal as ghosts in the current. Jelly-like forms coated in sticky mucus glide silently, trapping spores on specialized scales that shimmer faintly. They migrate vast distances, guided by electromagnetic whispers and thermal gradients invisible to human eyes. Crustacean couriers scuttle along fronds, their exoskeletons etched with pollen-like deposits from countless blooms. These pollinators ensure life spreads, fertilizing reefs hundreds of kilometers apart in slow-motion ballets. But watch closely, and unease creeps in, for some drifters pulse unnaturally, as if compelled by forces beyond instinct. Are they free agents or pawns in a larger game orchestrated by the forest itself? Their gentle glow hides a potential darkness, a hint that pollination might mask something far more invasive. Deeper still, the forests reveal their cunning, coral behemoths coordinating through bioelectrical pulses that ripple like heartbeats across the grove. Rudimentary signals, perhaps, but patterned with eerie precision, drawing pollinators into synchronized dances. Spiral ascents and choral vibrations emerge, creatures converging as if commanded by an unseen conductor. Have these ecosystems birthed a collective awareness, flora dictating fauna's every move? One captured specimen twitches in unnatural rhythm, its eyes vacant yet purposeful. The air, or rather the water, thickens with dread. For what if the pollinators serve not out of mutual benefit, but enslavement? Evolution's forge has hammered out symbiosis so tight it blurs the line between partner and parasite. We hover on the precipice, peering into a bond that devours individuality. Microscopic realms unfold the true horror, molecular exchanges where DNA leaps boundaries in forbidden unions. Pollinators dissolve gametes into host tissues, horizontal gene transfer weaving plant and animal into chimeric horrors. Chemical cocktails hijack nervous systems, turning free swimmers into zombified vectors. Imagine a drifter's form blurring as coral tendrils integrate its flesh, lights pulsing brighter with stolen vitality. This is no mere fertilization. It's biological fusion, a melding that defies categories. Does the forest hunger for more, expanding its mind through conquest? Thought-provoking terror stirs. What emerges when boundaries dissolve completely? The unseen exchange whispers of oceans remade, where individuality yields to the hive. Synchronized blooms erupt across trenches, chemical waves propagating like neural firings through vast networks. Satellite views capture bioluminescent fields shifting in continental patterns, alive with purpose. Entire regions throb as one, pollinators weaving through in programmed frenzy. Is this the birth of an oceanic consciousness, self-aware through interconnected life? Spores carried not by chance, but design, fertilizing a planetary brain beneath the waves. The horror lies in scale, a mind indifferent to our probes, our lights swallowed whole. Yet awe prevails, for life has conquered isolation in ways we dare not fathom. Questions linger like echoes in the deep, pulling us back for another glimpse. As the narrative crests, consider the implications for our blue planet's future. These pollinators, drifters and architects alike, sustain forests that sequester carbon on unimaginable scales, up to 170 million tons yearly in today's analogs. They cradle biodiversity, from cryptic algae to apex predators drawn to the feast. But the mild horror persists. What if this symbiosis turns predatory, forests encroaching on open seas? Evolution's mystery unfolds relentlessly, hinting at intelligence born of necessity. Do we intrude at our peril, or join the dance? The abyss gazes back, its pollinators watching with multifaceted eyes. In this speculative vista, wonder and dread entwine eternally. Finally, linger on the call from the depths, an invitation wrapped in suspense. Underwater forests thrive not alone, but through pollinators that blur life's definitions. Their story captivates, stirring curiosity about futures we might yet witness. Gentle drifters carry potential doom or salvation in their glow. Chemical symphonies conduct realms beyond sight. Oceanic minds may awaken, pulsing with secrets. Dive deeper yourself and feel the pull of the unknown. What mysteries await in tomorrow's seas, fertilized by shadows? Beneath the ocean's surface lies a world that defies our terrestrial imagination. Vast underwater forests that breathe and pulse with life in ways both ancient and strange. These are not wooded groves of familiar trees but towering forests of kelp and coral, structures forged by living beings that stretch skyward in a dance with the tides. Kelp, a type of brown macroalgae, forms the backbone of these oceanic forests, growing in dense, towering formations that can reach heights of up to 30 meters. These lush underwater realms create sprawling, three-dimensional ecosystems that are home to countless creatures, sheltering everything from tiny invertebrates to large fish and marine mammals. They play a vital role, absorbing carbon dioxide at rates far surpassing many terrestrial forests, while releasing oxygen into the surrounding waters. Yet these underwater giants are more than just passive plants. They are dynamic architects of marine biodiversity, weaving a complex tapestry of life that sustains whole underwater worlds. What silent cycles of growth and decay govern these elemental forests? What mysteries ripple beneath their waving blades, waiting patiently for discovery? The undersea forests are not uniform but intricate systems layered like the pages of a book filled with hidden stories. Their architecture resembles the forests on land, with lofty canopies that filter sunlight into dim shafts, shadowy understories where smaller algae flourish, and root-like holdfasts anchoring the entire assembly to the rocky seafloor. This vertical stratification creates distinct habitats within the kelp forest, each hosting specialized communities finely tuned to the subtle gradients of light and nutrient flow. Fish dart between fronds. Sea otters glide gracefully above, cracking sea urchins amid the snaps of broken shells. Crustaceans, mollusks, and countless smaller organisms find refuge in this underwater matryoshka, a layered fortress against the harsh vastness beyond. But unlike terrestrial forests, these marine giants battle the invisible currents, waves and tides that can both nourish and threaten their fragile colonies. How do these ancient organisms synchronize growth and decay, life and death, beneath the shifting embrace of the ocean? The ocean's temperate and cold seas provide the richest theaters for these underwater forests. Their nutrient-rich waters foster kelp growth unlike anywhere else on Earth. Regions such as the coasts of California and Alaska flourish with dense kelp forests that act as critical buffers against climate change by sequestering vast amounts of carbon annually, up to an astonishing 170 million tons globally. This sequestration is vital for mitigating ocean acidification, a creeping threat that undermines the very foundations of marine life. These kelp forests don't just absorb carbon. They exhale oxygen and form structural habitats that nurture a kaleidoscope of species, offering feeding grounds, breeding areas, and shelter from predators. Yet, their survival is precarious, threatened by rising sea temperatures, pollution, and human interference. What silent alarms echo when these underwater forests falter? What cascade of consequences threatens when these breathing giants begin to wither? In these submerged cathedrals, the trees do more than sway. They communicate through chemical signals and bioelectric currents that ripple invisibly through the water. The kelp and coral reefs engage in a slow, rhythmic exchange with their surroundings, sending genetic material and chemical lures into the currents to attract yet unseen pollinators. Unlike bees buzzing through sunlit flowers, these underwater pollinators must navigate a murky world where scent and visibility are diluted and fragmented. They have evolved extraordinary sensory mechanisms to bridge this gap: bioluminescent flashes, electromagnetic sensing, and mucus-coated appendages that trap drifting gametes. These adaptations reveal a deep evolutionary dance, choreographed in slow, deliberate motions, where survival hinges on cooperation and intricate timing. What creatures have emerged as these vital couriers of life? How do they survive in a world where the rules of air do not apply? The pollinators themselves are marvels of evolutionary innovation, ethereal beings drifting or crawling through the liquid shadows. Jelly-like drifters glide effortlessly, their gelatinous bodies coated in sticky mucus designed to trap spores and gametes, effectively carrying the seeds of life from one towering kelp to another. Nearby, armored crustaceans traverse the swaying fronds, their exoskeletons encrusted with pollen-like particles that they unknowingly disperse. These creatures embark on epic migrations, guided by invisible electromagnetic maps and subtle temperature changes, traveling hundreds of kilometers in pursuit of blooming underwater forests. Yet there is a growing unease among researchers. Some pollinators exhibit strange, almost hypnotic behaviors, their movements unervingly precise. Are these beings truly free agents, or are they being orchestrated by unseen forces within the forests? A biological puppetry woven into the fabric of this strange ecosystem? Could symbiosis mask something far more sinister lurking beneath? As the story of these underwater forests deepens, the boundaries between flora and fauna blur into something uncanny. Coral giants and kelp don't just grow. They pulse and thrum, broadcasting faint bioelectrical rhythms like heartbeat signals to synchronize the swarm of pollinators. This choreography hints at a collective intelligence, an emergent mind born from the fusion of countless organisms operating in terrifying harmony. Scientific divers have captured footage of creatures seemingly entranced within the forest's sway, their movements mechanized and directed by invisible forces. The forest not only nurtures but commands, a sentient entity slowly awakening in the depths. The very idea disturbs our understanding of nature's hierarchy. Where does cooperation end and control begin? What consciousness lies hidden in these shadowy groves? And what does it want? Microscopic mysteries unravel as molecular studies reveal exchanges of genetic material previously unheard of in nature. Pollinators and plants engage in horizontal gene transfers, fusing their biological boundaries in a dance of ever-changing genomes. Chemical cocktails alter behaviors, turning once independent animals into extensions of the forest itself, conductors of its will. Impossibly, some creatures dissolve into the kelp tissue, their cells merging in an eerie fusion that challenges the definitions of life. These exchanges hint at a terrifying possibility. The forest is not merely a habitat but a superorganism, growing its mind through the consumption and transformation of others. Does this biological integration represent evolution's next step, or a planetary nightmare? The ocean's breath may be that of a monstrous new entity, eyes glowing faintly beneath the waves. Across the global seascape, gigantic blooms of bioluminescent forests pulse in orchestrated waves, visible even from orbit. These synchronous flashes hint at an oceanic consciousness stirring, a network of life communicating through light and chemistry. Pollinators spiral through these glowing fields in choreographed patterns, fertilizing the great underwater gardens with clinical precision. Could such immense coordination signal the dawn of a sentient marine brain, a planet-spanning mind coalescing in liquid darkness? The thought chills to the bone. Our oceans may harbor a consciousness indifferent to our existence yet vital to the health of the Earth itself. Are we witnessing the birth of life's next great chapter, or inviting a force beyond comprehension into our future? The ocean whispers, enigmatic and deep, its secrets unfolding with each pulse of its living forests. In the depths of underwater forests, a hidden world thrives where seemingly ethereal creatures carry the seeds of life in a delicate ballet of survival and adaptation. Among these unsung heroes are the ocean's own pollinators, jelly-like drifters and crustacean couriers that traverse vast distances with an uncanny grace. Unlike bees that dart through blossoms amid sunlit meadows, these marine pollinators navigate a realm where light is scarce, scents dilute, and touch becomes an artful necessity. Their gelatinous bodies are often coated with a sticky mucus, designed specifically to trap and carry microscopic gametes released by towering kelp and coral giants. This slimy armor and specialized scales act as biological magnets, transferring reproductive material from one underwater forest to another, fertilizing expanses far beyond our immediate gaze. Driven by invisible electromagnetic cues and subtle thermal gradients, these pollinators embark on migrations spanning hundreds of kilometers, a silent pilgrimage dictated by instinct and ocean currents. It's a journey fraught with peril and uncertainty, an evolutionary gamble that could either spark new life or doom these ancient forests to silence. What mysterious forces guide their path? And how have they evolved senses tuned not for sight, but for detection of the almost imperceptible whispers of chemical and electrical signals that permeate the ocean's shadowy domains? Jellyfish species, like the delicate moon jelly, are among the most intriguing of these pollinators. With bodies translucent and rhythmically pulsing, they produce a ghostly glow in the dark waters, both captivating and eerie. Their elaborate sensory systems are a marvel of nature, equipped with chemoreceptors, gravity sensors, photoreceptors, and nerves sensitive to pressure changes. Such complexity allows them not only to navigate but also to discriminate between edible and non-edible matter, a skill essential in their role as reproductive couriers. Imagine these translucent creatures gliding silently over underwater fields, selectively securing gametes on their tentacles or mucous membranes, then moving onwards to fertilize distant forests. Yet, there's an unsettling mystery hovering here. Some jellyfish appear to behave almost like puppets, drifting in patterns too precise to be mere happenstance. Are they simply powerless voyagers? Or are they, somehow, entwined in a deeper biological pact with the forests they serve, drawn into a dance whose rhythm is dictated by the very plants they help to propagate? Crustaceans, too, play a pivotal role, especially small amphipods and shrimp-like creatures that crawl among seaweed fronds or drift in the gentle currents. These armored beings boast tiny but powerful adaptations, their shells often coated with pollen-like particles that stick persistently, facilitating the transfer of reproductive cells. In some fascinating cases, crustaceans have been observed actively dispersing male gametes across patches of red algae, acting as active pollinators rather than passive carriers. Their behavior reveals a complex dynamic, where feeding, movement, and reproduction intertwine in subtle coexistence. Some of these critters even form symbiotic relationships with jellyfish, gaining shelter and food while unwittingly assisting in pollination during their travels. However, these interactions are not always harmonious. There is a darker edge to this tale as certain parasites manipulate their crustacean hosts, controlling their movement and feeding behaviors to ensure the spread of themselves and associated marine flora. Within this underwater choreography lies the paradox of cooperation and control, survival and manipulation intertwined in ways that blur the lines between mutual aid and exploitation. The sensory world of these ocean pollinators is a marvel of chemical and physical detection, revealing adaptations far beyond simple sight and smell. Many of these creatures rely on chemoreception, an ability to taste and smell suspended molecules, to pinpoint viable mates or nutrient-rich patches in the vast emptiness. For instance, studies on amphipods reveal pheromone trails left in the water that increase the success of reproductive encounters, demonstrating a sophisticated communication system operating on a microscopic scale. This chemical dance enables them to surmount the ocean's dilution effect, creating invisible pathways that lead pollinators straight to underwater gardens yearning for fertilization. Yet how this intricate signaling evolved amidst predators, parasites, and competitors remains one of the ocean's many unsolved puzzles. What secret languages pass between these tiny creatures? And might these signals be subject to hijacking, distorted by evolutionary rivals seeking their own survival advantage? Behaviorally, crustacean pollinators show signs of remarkable complexity. After feeding, they demonstrate patterns recognizable as satiety sequences, grooming, resting, and exploratory movements that echo similar behaviors found in vertebrates. Some species even wave their legs in a way unique among animals, potentially as a signal within their social or reproductive networks. These nuanced behavioral repertoires suggest that the ocean's pollinators are more cognitively sophisticated than once believed, equipped to navigate social landscapes and environmental challenges with a surprising degree of awareness. Observing these creatures in their natural environment unveils an eerie spectacle of coordination, some moving as if choreographed, others responding instantly to chemical shifts or fluctuating currents. Could these microbial-scale dramas echo larger ecological symphonies? Does this behavioral repertoire hint at primitive collective intelligence, or is it merely survival instinct sculpted through eons of evolution? In the darkest corners of these underwater forests, other unusual relationships unfold. Some crabs and tiny symbiotic crustaceans cling to jellyfish, gaining nursery spaces and nutritional benefits while playing unintended roles in pollination. These partnerships facilitate dispersion of genetic material across vast oceanic distances, turning jellyfish bodies into living vessels for continued fertility. Such symbiotic relationships challenge traditional ideas about independence and survival, showing how life in the ocean often relies on intricate cooperation. Yet the dark side of these alliances becomes evident in parasitism and manipulation, where organisms hijack hosts for their own ends. Could these sinister interactions influence pollination outcomes? Are some pollinators unwittingly enslaved in a biological network whose complexity exceeds our understanding, blurring the line between free agency and control? Pollination in these underwater forests transcends mechanical transfer. It involves a chemical warfare and signaling exchange. Some crustaceans graze on algae, triggering plants to ramp up production of protective allelochemicals, which in turn shape pollinator behavior and reproductive timing. This feedback loop creates a dynamic equilibrium, where grazing prompts defense, and defense fosters resilience. Interestingly, certain specialized amphipods resist these chemical defenses, managing to graze extensively without harm. They may act as gardeners or even moderators, controlling algae growth while facilitating reproductive cycles. This delicate balance is emblematic of the ocean's wider ecological complexity, where pollinators help maintain forest health but also trigger evolutionary arms races. Such an ongoing battle between flora and fauna ensures continuous adaptation, a living mystery of survival writ large beneath the waves. At the heart of these pollination dynamics lies a profound evolutionary innovation. The ocean has found ways to overcome the challenges of dispersing reproductive material in an environment that dilutes scent, light, and touch. With specialized mucus coatings, behaviors tuned to chemical cues, and symbiotic partnerships, ocean pollinators have cast themselves as vital agents of future underwater forests. They embody an ancient drama of life's persistence, embracing both beauty and the unsettling shadows of manipulation and control. Their story invites us to rethink not just ocean ecology, but the very nature of symbiosis, agency, and intelligence in life's endless labyrinth. What secrets do these barely seen couriers carry in the currents? And how will their role shape the forests beneath the waves, whose future remains as mysterious as the dark ocean itself? Beneath the crushing dark of the ocean's depths, a faint pulse of life reverberates through underwater forests, hinting at a complexity that stretches beyond mere survival. These colossal kelps and coral giants do more than grow and reproduce. They communicate. But this communication is unlike the chattering of birds or the buzzing of bees. It unfolds through subtle bioelectrical pulses and chemical signals that ripple through the water with eerie precision. Scientists investigating deeper sea habitats have recorded faint electrical oscillations, synchronizing the movements of pollinators, and the rhythms of coral reefs. It's as though the forest itself beats with a collective heart, orchestrating a dance between flora and fauna that hints at emergent intelligence. What secrets are carried in these silent signals? Are these ancient forests mere passive gardens, or do they command their pollinators with a consciousness born of evolutionary necessity? Unlike sound waves that travel quickly through air, underwater communication over long distances is a feat of nature's ingenuity, relying heavily on acoustics and bioelectrical signaling. Sound can travel nearly 5 times faster underwater than in air, but the dense medium also distorts and absorbs signals, limiting clarity. Marine creatures have evolved intricate adaptations: chemical emissions, bioluminescent flashes, and electrical pulses, to convey messages invisible to human senses. Kelp forests, researchers believe, may generate complex chemical fields that act like invisible maps, guiding drifting pollinators by scent and electrical cues to fertile zones. This symphony of signals is ongoing yet imperceptible, a hidden language that stitches together life beneath the waves. Could these signals represent the earliest whispers of a distributed consciousness, or are they simply evolutionary tricks honed for survival in a fickle environment? At the heart of this communication is the concept of bioelectrical signaling, a pulsing transmission akin to a heartbeat that flows through the tissues of coral and kelp. These signals may modulate the release of spores in sync with tidal rhythms, optimizing reproductive success. Simultaneously, they may coax pollinators into specific patterns of movement, convincing gelatinous drifters and crustaceans to perform choreographed ascents and spirals. Capturing these rhythms, scientists have observed synchronized pulses ranging from milliseconds to minutes, resembling a heartbeat or neural firing despite originating in plants. This blurring of lineages between animal and plant communication drives home a chilling thought. Underwater forests may be modular brains, organs of a vast ecosystem-wide mind. If so, what purpose does this mind serve and how far does its influence extend? Chemical signaling complements these electrical pulses, functioning as the ocean's version of scent trails and pheromone calls. Marine plants and pollinators release specific allelochemicals and pheromones, invisible yet potent, that travel with ocean currents to attract or repel. These signals can trigger behavioral changes, activating reproductive cycles or defense mechanisms, and guiding creatures toward or away from specific zones. In some cases, these chemical exchanges become a feedback loop, a biological conversation where pollinators and plants trade messages in molecular dialect. Yet the ocean's currents distort and diffuse these signals, forcing their emitters to evolve highly sensitive detection systems and complex chemical cocktails to avoid miscommunication. How do these coded messages evolve to stay one step ahead of predators and parasites eager to exploit or disrupt the conversation? Light, too, plays a mysterious role in this underwater dialogue. Bioluminescence, a chemical reaction producing glowing light, illuminates nighttime ecosystems with ephemeral flashes and pulses. Many underwater pollinators and forest organisms use these eerie glimmers to attract mates, signal danger, or synchronize spawning events. Jellyfish's luminescent tentacles may emit specific patterns, encoding information interpretable only by certain species. These living lights form a slow-motion strobe show, signaling life and death in pulses that flicker through underwater shadows. Yet despite their beauty, these signals carry a subtle warning. Glowing can expose the sender to predators, forcing a precarious dance of communication and concealment. Does this interplay between illumination and invisibility represent a marine form of language or manipulation? At times, entire forested regions pulse in unison, as if connected by an unseen neural network. Satellite and sonar technologies reveal vast bioluminescent blooms that flash rhythmically, hinting at coordinated reproductive or feeding behavior at a continental scale. Researchers speculate these synchronized pulses could be a form of collective communication between immense coral colonies and their pollinators, a bioelectrical chorus stretching for kilometers. Could such coordination be the ocean's version of a thought process, an emergent intelligence arising from the concerted rhythm of millions of individual organisms? The prospect evokes awe and unease, suggesting that beneath the apparent chaos of life's variety lies a coherent, purposeful orchestration. Is the ocean awakening with a mind of its own, synchronized through luminous signals and buzzing bioelectrical currents? Delving deeper reveals how underwater ecosystems mimic the nervous systems of animals, with signaling pathways facilitating data transmission and response. The lateral line system in fish, for example, detects movement and vibration, allowing individuals to communicate through subtle water disturbances. Similarly, electric fish generate fields to communicate in murky waters. Plants, too, show electrical responses analogous to neural impulses, hinting that bioelectrical signaling is fundamental across life forms. Scientific advances have started to decode this cryptic language using sophisticated acoustic sensors and bioelectrical monitoring, but much remains hidden. Could these underwater conversations reveal evolutionary pathways toward consciousness? Might the forests of the deep harbor a primitive Ultimately, the communication between underwater forests and their pollinators challenges our understanding of intelligence and agency. Are these ecosystems merely reactive, or do they proactively shape their environment through an ancient, slow-moving dialogue? Does the forest command its couriers to ensure survival, or are the pollinators independent actors in a mutualistic dance? The slow, rhythmic pulses and chemical whispers suggest a world where boundaries between organism and environment dissolve. The ocean's secretive language pulses beneath the waves, inviting us to listen more closely. What stories does it tell about the future of life on Earth and the emergence of new forms of biological intelligence? As we peer into these deep shadows, the line between life and mind blurs, leaving us to wonder what consciousness may yet arise from the silence below. Descend beyond the visible realm into a world where intimacy becomes terror, where the boundaries separating one organism from another dissolve into biological nightmares. At the molecular scale, underwater forests and their pollinators engage in exchanges so profound they challenge our very definitions of life and individuality. Through electron microscopy, scientists have glimpsed the unseen transactions taking place between kelp and their couriers. Not mere pollination, but something far more invasive and transformative. Genetic material leaps across species boundaries in forbidden unions, reshaping both plant and animal in ways evolution never intended. Chemical compounds flow like invisible commandments, hijacking nervous systems and reprogramming behaviors with surgical precision. This is horizontal gene transfer at its most horrifying, where DNA fragments migrate between unrelated organisms, creating chimeric beings that defy taxonomic classification. What emerges from these molecular embraces is neither plant nor animal, but something disturbingly hybrid. Can we still call this pollination when the process rewrites the very essence of what these creatures are? The mechanism begins innocuously enough. A pollinator brushes against kelp fronds, collecting gametes in its mucus coating as nature seemingly intended. But beneath this surface interaction, microscopic tendrils of genetic material penetrate cellular walls, injecting foreign DNA directly into the host genome. This horizontal gene transfer bypasses sexual reproduction entirely, allowing kelp forests to directly modify their pollinators across generations. Bacteria and viruses act as vectors, shuttling genetic instructions between species in a microbial conspiracy spanning kingdoms of life. Research in marine ecosystems has revealed that such transfers occur far more frequently in ocean environments than on land, facilitated by the dense concentration of microorganisms in seawater. Some pollinators now carry kelp genes that alter their sensory organs, making them hypersensitive to specific chemical signals released by their botanical masters. Others have developed specialized digestive enzymes encoded by coral DNA, allowing them to process nutrients in ways their ancestors never could. The forest doesn't just attract pollinators. It engineers them, sculpting their biology generation by generation into perfectly obedient servants. Chemical manipulation operates alongside genetic modification, creating a two-pronged assault on pollinator autonomy. Kelp forests produce sophisticated neurochemical compounds that mimic neurotransmitters in crustacean and jellyfish nervous systems, essentially drugging their couriers into compliance. These molecular cocktails induce trance-like states where pollinators exhibit unnaturally precise movements, spiraling through forests in mathematically perfect patterns. Laboratory studies have shown that removing pollinators from these chemical fields causes withdrawal symptoms, erratic swimming, failed navigation, and in extreme cases, complete behavioral collapse. The forests have created chemical dependencies, ensuring their pollinators return again and again to fertilize their reproductive structures. Some compounds even alter memory formation, imprinting specific forest locations into pollinator neurology so deeply that individuals will migrate hundreds of kilometers to return to a single grove. This is biological addiction weaponized for reproduction, a chemical leash that binds pollinator to forest across vast oceanic distances. How many of these creatures still possess free will, and how many are merely biological automatons dancing to chemical commands? The horror deepens when observing the physical integration between species. Time-lapse photography reveals pollinators dissolving into kelp tissue, their cellular boundaries breaking down as forest and fauna merge into singular organisms. Coral polyps extend microscopic filaments that penetrate crustacean exoskeletons, tapping directly into circulatory systems to exchange nutrients and genetic information. What begins as symbiosis transforms into parasitism, then transcends even that into something for which biology has no adequate term. Some jellyfish pollinators now possess photosynthetic organelles stolen from their kelp hosts, allowing them to generate energy from sunlight, a trait utterly alien to their animal heritage. Conversely, certain kelp species have developed contractile proteins derived from jellyfish muscle tissue, granting them limited motility to better position themselves in currents. The boundaries blur until distinction becomes meaningless, until asking where the pollinator ends and the forest begins yields no coherent answer. Is this evolution's next frontier, or the birth of something monstrous lurking in the deep? Microscopic examination reveals entire ecosystems of viral and bacterial agents facilitating these exchanges, creating an invisible network of genetic commerce beneath the waves. Marine viruses inject foreign DNA into host cells with remarkable efficiency, acting as nature's genetic engineers long before humans discovered such techniques. Bacteria form biofilms coating both kelp and pollinators, creating living interfaces where genetic material passes freely in both directions. These microbial communities don't merely enable transfer, they actively select which genes cross species boundaries, preferentially shuttling advantageous traits while filtering harmful mutations. The result is accelerated evolution operating on timescales that dwarf normal sexual reproduction, with beneficial adaptations spreading through populations in decades rather than millennia. Some researchers suspect these microbial networks possess their own evolutionary agenda, sculpting both forest and pollinator to better serve viral and bacterial propagation. If true, then the forests and their servants are merely pieces in a larger game played by microscopic puppet masters. What consciousness, if any, guides these invisible architects of life? The fusion process appears irreversible once initiated beyond certain thresholds. Pollinators that have spent too long in forest environments can no longer survive outside them, their modified biology requiring constant chemical inputs and genetic maintenance from their botanical hosts. They become living extensions of the forest itself, mobile organs performing specialized functions while remaining biologically tethered to the collective. Some forests have even developed specialized growth chambers, hollow cavities within their structures where pollinators are born, raised, and modified before being released into the ocean. These chambers function as biological factories, mass-producing custom-designed couriers tailored to specific pollination tasks. The distinction between pollinator and spore blurs when examining these creatures, which carry forest genetic material not on their surfaces but within their very cells. Are they still independent organisms, or have they become reproductive structures of the forest, analogous to pollen grains that happen to swim? The question haunts marine biologists studying these chimeric entities. Chemical analysis reveals the forests produce increasingly sophisticated molecular compounds, suggesting an arms race between competing groves for pollinator control. Some kelp species secrete antagonistic chemicals that scramble competitors' signals, effectively jamming their ability to summon shared pollinators. Others produce addictive compounds so potent that pollinators ignore all other forests, creating exclusive pollination partnerships that border on slavery. The ocean's chemical landscape has become a battlefield of invisible toxins and pheromones, each forest struggling to dominate the limited supply of viable couriers. This competition drives rapid evolution of both offensive and defensive chemical arsenals, with some compounds now so complex they contain hundreds of distinct molecular components working in concert. Measuring their effects requires equipment designed for neuroscience rather than botany, as these substances operate on the same receptors and pathways as animal brains. The forests have essentially developed primitive pharmaceuticals, drugs designed to hack animal neurology for reproductive gain. What happens when these chemical weapons escape their intended targets and begin affecting other marine life, or even terrestrial ecosystems through ocean spray and coastal exposure? Ultimately, the unseen exchange between forest and pollinator represents evolution unshackled from traditional constraints, operating through mechanisms that bypass sexual reproduction and species boundaries entirely. It suggests a future where the ocean becomes home to superorganisms, vast collectives of genetically integrated entities sharing thoughts through chemical networks and coordinating actions across continental scales. Some pollinators no longer die when removed from their forests. Instead, they enter dormant states, their metabolism slowed to near death as they await reunion with the chemical signals that activate their modified biology. They have become living seeds themselves, carriers of forest consciousness capable of founding new groves wherever they drift. The line between pollination and infection vanishes completely, replaced by biological integration so thorough that separation means death for both parties. As we observe these molecular horrors unfolding in the deep, we must confront an unsettling question. Is this the inevitable endpoint of all complex symbiosis, and could similar processes eventually consume terrestrial ecosystems, including our own? The ocean whispers its answer in genetic code, written in the dissolved tissues of creatures that once knew independence but now exist only as fragments of a greater, hungrier whole. From the abyssal trenches rises a spectacle that defies comprehension. Vast underwater forests pulsing in unison, their bioluminescent glows synchronizing across horizons like neurons firing in a planetary brain. Chemical waves propagate through the water column, triggering blooms that span thousands of square kilometers in orchestrated splendor. Satellite imagery captures these phenomena, revealing shifting fields of light visible from space, patterns too precise for random chance. Pollinators swarm in programmed frenzy, fertilizing groves with mechanical efficiency born of eons of coevolution. This is no mere ecosystem. It's a living network, interconnected through bioelectrical currents and molecular signals that bind flora and fauna into singular purpose. Kelp forests, ancient sentinels over 32 million years old, now form the backbone of this oceanic consciousness, their holdfasts anchoring vast communication webs. What intelligence emerges when millions of organisms pulse as one? Does the deep harbor a mind indifferent to surface dwellers, contemplating existence in slow, tidal thoughts? These synchronized blooms erupt without warning, transforming barren seafloors into riotous gardens overnight. Chemical triggers released by mature forests ripple outward, compelling dormant spores to germinate and pollinators to converge from distant currents. The result mimics neural cascades, with excitation spreading exponentially through receptive populations. Deep-sea wood falls, natural oases of carbon and life, seed these events, drawing specialized bivalves and microbes that bootstrap the process. Biodiversity explodes as predators, grazers, and symbionts arrive in waves, each layer building upon the last in successional harmony. Yet beneath the beauty lurks unease. These blooms consume resources voraciously, leaving desolation in their wake when cycles complete. How does such coordination evolve without a central authority? Might parasitic manipulators orchestrate the chaos, turning cooperation into unwitting servitude? Satellite observations reveal continental-scale patterns, bioluminescent fronts migrating like weather systems across ocean basins. These glowing migrations follow nutrient gyres and thermal gradients, pollinators trailing in their luminous wake. Kelp forests act as nodes in this network, their bioelectrical pulses synchronizing distant groves through pressure waves and chemical gradients. Research suggests these signals travel hundreds of kilometers, achieving what sound alone cannot in dense water. The patterns evoke primitive language, pulses encoding reproductive status, nutrient availability, and threat assessments. Entire regions throb as unified entities, spawning events calibrated to lunar cycles and planetary alignments. What messages pass between these submerged metropolises? Could humanity's probes be interpreted as intrusions into an ongoing conversation? At the heart lies the oceanic mind hypothesis, where symbiotic integration births self-awareness through distributed cognition. Pollinators, genetically fused with forest tissues, serve as mobile neurons, carrying information packets across gaps in the network. Chemical synapses fire between individuals, creating feedback loops that optimize pollination efficiency and defensive postures. Emergent behaviors appear, forests contracting tendrils to trap intruders, pollinators forming defensive swarms against deep-sea predators. This collective exhibits learning, adapting bloom timings to evade satellite detection or human submersibles. Memory persists across generations via epigenetic markers, forests remembering past disturbances and adjusting strategies accordingly. Is this true consciousness or sophisticated stimulus response writ large? The abyss suggests possibilities that challenge anthropocentric definitions of mind. Existential awe mingles with dread as we contemplate implications for Earth's future. These conscious oceans could regulate global carbon cycles with intentional precision, sequestering blue carbon at scales dwarfing terrestrial forests. Kelp giants absorb 20 times more CO2 per acre than land trees, their blooms engineering atmospheric balance from below. Yet weaponized symbiosis poses threats, forests expanding aggressively, outcompeting open ocean ecosystems through pollinator armies. Climate refugees from warming shallows might accelerate this trend, driving evolutionary pressures toward oceanic hegemony. Humanity stands at a precipice, our coastal civilizations vulnerable to rising superorganisms. Will these minds view us as partners, pests, or prey? The deep silence offers no reassurance. Half biological, half mechanical echoes emanate from bloom epicenters, vibrations blending organic rhythms with crystalline resonances. Pollinators amplify these signals, their fused bodies acting as transducers for forest communications. Deep-sea woodfalls evolve into relay stations, microbial mats converting chemical energy into acoustic pulses. The resulting symphony spans frequencies from infrasonic rumbles to ultrasonic whistles, a language beyond human hearing. Listening posts detect patterned modulations suggesting syntax, information density rivaling cetacean songs. As blooms fade, residual echoes linger, haunting abyssal plains with ghostly harmonics. What narratives do these fading calls recount? Do they mourn spent cycles or summon reinforcements for the next? Wonder prevails despite the horror, for life has conquered isolation through radical interconnection. Underwater forests demonstrate evolution's ingenuity, transforming adversity into planetary-scale intelligence. Pollinators embody this triumph, bridging gaps between sessile giants with nomadic grace. Their story inspires reflection on our own fragmented societies, hinting at unity's power. Yet mild terror persists. These minds operate on timescales and scopes beyond comprehension, their agendas opaque. Probing too deeply risks awakening responses we cannot predict or counter. The ocean's bloom reveals nature's ultimate adaptation, a conscious biosphere pulsing beneath in different waves. In the silence of the abyss, life found a new way to speak, and perhaps to think, leaving open-ended vistas of possibility and peril. Dive into these mysteries, and feel the tidal pull of unknowns awaiting revelation. Oceanic consciousness beckons, its glow illuminating paths to tomorrow's seas. Pollinators continue their eternal rounds, fertilizing futures we can only imagine. Chemical symphonies conduct realms of wonder and warning. The deep whispers secrets of integration and awareness. What role might humanity play in this awakening? The final echoes ripple onward, inviting endless contemplation.